So last month I kicked off this series on the Artemis program by talking about the robotic and uncrewed missions that are kind of starting everything off. They're going to do some research and basically set the stage for the next generation of humans to walk on the moon. And today, we're going to talk about those humans. All right, so we sent the robots, we've conducted the tests, we stockpiled supplies and instruments through the CLIPS program, and now it's time to send living, breathing, pooping humans back to the surface of the moon. By the way, if you haven't seen the video that I did previously about the robotic missions, I'll put the link down in the description. I do encourage you to go check that out because, well, that's how I make money. Honesty. But those robotic missions are interesting, so it's worth checking out. And it also kind of helps establish, why we're going back and the importance of the water resources that are going to make it possible for us to go back and stay back. All right, so if we're going to talk about human beings going back to the moon, we need to talk about the vehicle that's going to get them there. And for Artemis, that's the Orion Capsule. Okay, so a lot of attention has been paid over the last several years about the next generation of crewed vehicles that are designed to send people to low Earth orbit to the ISS. So this was a job that NASA handed off to private companies as part of their commercial crew program. So, we've heard a lot about the SpaceX Crew Dragon, the Boeing Starliner, we've heard a lot about the Sierra Space Dream Chaser. Only one of those has actually flown people to the ISS so far. But at the same time, kind of under the radar of all that other stuff going on, NASA's been developing the Orion Capsule. And what's different about the Orion Capsule, it's designed to handle deep space travel, outside of low Earth orbit and our magnetic shield. Now, the obvious comparison that you want to make is with the command module of the Apollo missions, but Orion is different to the command module in some very significant ways. So first and most obvious is that Orion is bigger than Apollo. It's actually built to carry 4 passengers, whereas Apollo is only built for 3. But maybe just as obvious is that the technology in Orion is like a million times what Apollo was. Like, you always hear that the computer on the Apollo command module had less power than the phone that's in your pocket right now. Well, the Orion has the power of, at least 2 phones. So, progress. I'm kidding, I'm sure it has far more than that, but the point is that the navigation, guidance, and communication systems are top of the line tech. It's just way beyond what Apollo had. Including, and I just found out about this since I wrote the script, it's going to be voice activated. It's going to have vocal commands. They're going to have their own version of Alexa on board, basically. Also, it has a brand new toilet on board, because insert joke here. There's also a bunch of storage behind the seats, and in the event of a solar storm, they can actually hide out back there. There's extra shielding so they can take shelter. It's being built by Lockheed Martin, so just the way Boeing has Starliner, Lockheed has Orion, and it's designed to support a crew for up to 21 days without docking. And it comes with this massive launch abort system that covers the entire capsule and then, jettisons away after it leaves the atmosphere. And it's got these 4 larger motors in case they need to abort closer to the pad, assuming they'll still be allowed to abort in Florida. Attached to Orion is a European service module, which we could compare to the service module on the Apollo, except this is obviously being built by the European Space Agency. This thing is loaded with engines, 33 engines total, including the main engine, which will push it out to lunar orbit, auxiliary thrusters, and reaction control thrusters. All of which will make this a very stable, precise vehicle, which is what you want from something that'll be docking a lot. This will also carry the power and propulsion systems and consumables like air and water for the crew. The other thing it'll have that the Apollo service module didn't is solar panels. The ESM will have 4 solar array wings that NASA says will generate enough power to run 2 3-bedroom houses. And together, this is the system that's going to ferry astronauts back and forth between low Earth orbit and lunar orbit. Now, if you recall in my video on the Space Task Group's plans for NASA post-Apollo, that was one of the things that they advocated for, was basically a ferry that can just kind of like move people and cargo back and forth between low Earth orbit and lunar orbit, between various space stations and lunar bases. With one big difference, theirs is based on a nuclear Nerva engine, which you can actually see featured in the show For All Mankind. By the way, to the million people that have asked, yes, I am actually finally getting caught up on that show. Of course, all of this is going to get off the ground on the back of the SLS, which I could do a whole video on, and I have, but just in case you're not familiar with it, here's how you make an SLS. How to make a space launch system. Start with a space transportation system. Remove the orbiter. Detach the engines and apply them to the bottom of the external fuel tank. Throw in one more engine just for good measure. Then top the fuel tank with a second interim cryogenic propulsion stage and stack the Orion Capsule and European Service Module, or any moonbound payload, on top of that. And presto! Congratulations! You've made a SLUS! Easy peasy. Except actually difficult. SLS looks like a cross between a Saturn V and a space shuttle, which seems like that would simplify everything because we've done all that before, but in many ways, this is an entirely new rocket, and that's why it's taken so long for development to take place. It's been in development since 2011. It's been 11 years now, and it's just now getting ready to go up. And there have been delays this year too. It was supposed to launch back in June, but in April they rolled it out to the launch pad for a wet dress rehearsal, and they actually found a faulty helium valve that needed to be replaced. And look, it would be really easy to get super ranty right now about the entirety of the SLS program. It definitely has its issues, and there's plenty of content out there for that. I'll just skip that here. Just check out the comments if you really want to go down that road, because it's already started. But in an attempt to be more positive, I'll just say that, that's what testing's for. That's the point of wet dress rehearsals, to find those issues and take care of them. And that's what they're doing. To be fair, this is not a small rocket. In fact, it is currently the biggest, most powerful rocket in the world. It tops out at 322 feet tall on the landing pad, which is just lightly shorter than a Saturn V, but at 8.8 million pounds of thrust, it's 15% more powerful. And it'll carry 5 tons more cargo than the space shuttle, so not too shabby. And these are powered by those 4 shuttle-proven RS-25 engines and those 2 magnificent solid rocket boosters that I just can't wait to see back in action. Luckily, you and I won't have to wait that long to see them back in action, because as of this recording, Artemis I is scheduled to launch on August 29th. T-0 is set for 8:33 a.m. from Pad 39B at Kennedy Space Center, with extra opportunities on September 2nd and 5th, should there be delays. Artemis I, also called Exploration Mission 1, or EM1, will be an uncrewed test of the SLS, Orion, and, well, everything. The plan is to go into Earth's orbit, then fire a translunar injection burn out toward the moon. Once at the moon, it'll do a little loop-de-loop that'll actually take it further out into space than any human-rated vehicle has ever gone before coming back to Earth. Once back in Earth's orbit, the Orion Capsule will separate from the service module and re-enter the atmosphere, splashing down the Pacific Ocean. Altogether, the Artemis I mission will last about 3 weeks, and it'll test all the new propulsion, guidance, and communication systems. And along the way, Orion will drop off 13 CubeSats that'll run a variety of deep space experiments, including one where they test the effect of deep space radiation on yeast, and also lots of experiments scanning the moon's surface looking for water, ice, and other resources. But maybe the most important part of Artemis I, the most important test that they're doing, is just seeing if we can do this again. This is the first time a human-rated spacecraft has visited the moon in 50 years. I mean, 49 years and 9 months. Artemis is a massive program involving 3,200 suppliers and contractors from every state in the country, including Aerojet Rocketdyne, Boeing, Jacobs, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman, because that's how things get funded. And yes, there's plenty of debate around whether this model even makes sense anymore. So in a way, Artemis I is kind of testing the entire system, like seeing if this is still a viable way forward. And assuming everything goes well, the next step is to put people on that rocket. That's the point of Artemis II. Artemis II is basically the Apollo 8 moment of the Artemis program. It'll basically do the same thing as Artemis I, but this time, there's going to be 4 astronauts on board. And just like Apollo 8, they will have the experience of coming around the moon and seeing the Earth in its entirety in the distance. And yeah, they will be the first human beings to see that in 50 years. And maybe, if we're lucky, they'll live stream it, so it's something we can all experience with them, which is something we've never been able to do before. Like, I feel like I'm seeing that a lot in this video, but a lot of people kind of blow off Artemis because we've already been to the moon before. They kind of think it's something we've already done, but there's a lot of firsts in this program, and yeah, I think that's worth mentioning. Artemis II is scheduled to launch in 2024 from a slightly evolved SLS rocket. It'll actually be able to lift up 45 metric tons, so it'll be bigger and badder than before. It'll be a 10-day mission during which the crew will test out all the systems, including system performance, crew interfaces, guidance and navigation systems, and that fancy new toilet I talked about. They'll also be doing something different from the Apollo missions in that they're going to use the Deep Space Network to communicate with Earth, as opposed to using Earth's satellite network, so they'll be testing that out as well. The DSN consists of 3 facilities spaced equidistant from each other, approximately 120 degrees apart in longitude, from all around the world. This is how NASA keeps track of solar system probes, Mars rovers, the Voyagers, that kind of thing. But I think it's kind of interesting that they're going to be using this network that's designed for deep space missions for a human flight. I think this is the first time they've ever done that, which is really cool. And I don't know, I mean, I imagine someday children on Mars will be learning about the first time humans communicated over the deep space network that they use every day. And the names of those astronauts will be, well, we don't know yet. They haven't been picked for the specific missions yet, but there have been 18 astronauts chosen for the Artemis team. It's a diverse group of equal parts men and women, reflecting the agency's goal of putting the first woman and person of color on the moon. So, assuming Artemis II goes off without a hitch, now it's time to land. There's just one thing to do first. So I talked in the last video about the Lunar Gateway and its kind of, funky rectilinear halo orbit. Well, the first couple of modules are expected to go up in November of 2024 on a Falcon Heavy, so maybe right around the time of Artemis II. Another module called the IHAB will be added later on, but more on that in a minute. Because once that's ready to go, it's time to put some boots on the regolith. Of course, you need something to get you down to that regolith. So I guess we need to talk about the human landing system. It's very simple nomenclature, this Artemis program. The Space Launch System launches people into space. The Human Landing System lands humans. So again, this can be and has been its own video many times over. There's a million hot takes on this out there. Feel free to browse around and look at yourself. But the short version is, it's a lunar version of the SpaceX Starship. NASA opened up the Human Landing System to private industry, and it came down to 3 proposals. SpaceX with the Starship variant, a company called Dynetics, and Blue Origin's national team, which included Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Draper. And in April of 2021, to pretty much everybody's shock, NASA chose SpaceX. And then Blue Origin sued NASA, and I got all ugly and stupid. And I say shock because, look at this thing. But also maybe not a shock because it's the only option that was fully reusable. All the others would leave a landing stage behind when they ascend up to the gateway again, kind of like the Apollo lander did. And you can only do that so many times before the landing stages start to pile up. So my argument would be, if NASA really wants this to be a sustainable, ongoing presence on the moon, you can't be constantly leaving stages behind. They need something fully reusable. So we haven't seen any official renderings of the interior, but we do know that the crew space will be way, way up at the top of this thing. Yeah, the plan seems to be that they're going to engineer a crane of some sort, kind of like what you're seeing up here, to get the crew and cargo down to the ground, which kind of sounds insane to me, especially considering how abrasive lunar dust is. Yeah, I have concerns about the longevity of the solution. But another reason that NASA might have chosen SpaceX is because they've already shown that they can do human-rated flight with the Crew Dragon, and I don't know, this looks kind of like a hybrid of the Starship and Crew Dragon to me. And they have also been able to show that they can propulsively land rockets really well, so okay, maybe not so shocking. Now, it should be mentioned that this choice that NASA made was for which company that they're going to contract with to build this thing. So they are going to help fund the Starship lander. The other 2 companies can still revise their plans and then lobby NASA to use their lander on their own dime, which they seem to be doing. But yeah, it's a huge lander, and it looks especially insane when it's docked with a gateway. Why even have it? But yeah, this version of Starship is never coming back to Earth again, so there's no heat shielding on it. This is a deep space vessel. And we don't know exactly when they're going to have it ready, but it better be by 2025, because that, at long last, is when we land on the moon again, on Artemis III. So if Artemis II is this generation's Apollo 8, Artemis III would be this generation's Apollo 11. The math checks out. So we're doing in 3 steps what Apollo took 11 steps to do. That's progress. Artemis III will take off on the SLS with a crew of 4, and after a few orbits will head out to the moon, where the gateway and lander will be waiting for them. They'll dock Orion with the gateway and do a few orbits before 2 of the astronauts move over into the lunar lander, and then the next swing by the moon they drop down to the surface and land. These 2 astronauts will spend about a week on the moon, performing experiments and testing out all the systems while looking for water ice in nearby craters. All the while, the other 2 will be up doing the same thing in orbit from the gateway. So it's like the command module pilot from Apollo, except they get to have a buddy. Anyway, after the mission objectives are complete, the lander will launch back up and dock with the gateway, crew will transfer cargo and themselves back into the Orion, and then head back to Earth for a splashdown. And along the way, I'm sure we'll get to see some cool live events from the moon, which is kind of wild to think about. Like the first moon landing was shown on this, kind of crappy black and white CRTV. Now we're going to be streaming 4K on Twitch. So Artemis III is going to be a technology demonstration and a celebration of American ingenuity. A very big deal will be made for this. But just like Apollo 11 wasn't the end of the Apollo program, Artemis III is just the beginning for Artemis. Next up will be Artemis IV, which actually won't land on the moon. It'll be a crewed mission to deliver that IHAB module I was talking about earlier, to connect that to the gateway, and they'll spend some time on that. It's really more of a gateway mission where they're testing out human habitation in deep space. And it'll also go up on a much bigger, beefier SLS Block 1B that will replace the ICPS second stage with a larger exploration upper stage. The mission objectives are still being worked out, but it's currently scheduled for launch in 2027, followed by Artemis V in 2028. Artemis V will go back to the surface of the moon, and it'll kind of be similar in flight profile to the Artemis III, with 2 astronauts going down to the moon and 2 staying up in the gateway. They will be bringing with them an extra module for the gateway called the Spirit module and the Advanced Canadarm. This will also be when we see the return of the moon rover. They're going to bring an unpressurized moon rover to cover more ground, and they'll probably likely spend more time on the surface than on Artemis III. So that brings us to 2028, assuming things stick to plan. And at this point, we will have landed on the moon twice. There will have been 4 astronauts to have walked on the moon, and this is all that's been funded. Things get kind of murky after this. Now, if you go to the Wikipedia page, there are proposed missions going all the way up through Artemis X, roughly in 2032. But right now, NASA has only been funded up through Artemis V. So what does that mean for the future of the Artemis program? The answer depends on a lot of things, not least of which is the economic and political landscape that we'll be in the next 8 years, both of which are super stable these days. Also, as many people are already saying in the comments, I'm sure if SpaceX is able to nail the Starship platform, I think you can pretty much say goodbye to the SLS. It's pretty much a no-brainer. Though I've said it once, I'll keep saying it. I think it's going to be a really long time before Starship is human-rated, especially the landing bit. Also, who knows? You know, the private space industry is changing super fast. Maybe another company steps up and provides a different, more affordable solution. I think more than anything else, the future of the Artemis program depends on whether they're successful at finding water ice in those craters. After all, that's kind of the whole point, is to find resources that can sustain a long-term base on the moon and then, you know, exploration beyond. And I have to say, as I was researching this, I was surprised how much the beyond part gets hyped up in the Artemis discussions. I mean, they really do see this as a first step to Mars. I mean, I found this page where they kind of explain the Artemis logo and what all the elements mean, and they reference the words Mars and beyond almost as much as they do the moon. Even that red swoosh that completes the letter A is colored red for Mars. NASA has totally framed Artemis as just the first step toward human exploration of the whole solar system. And I'm not gonna lie, I like it. I feel like so much press has been given to Elon and his Mars ambitions over the years, and we don't hear remotely as much about the fact that NASA's got pretty similar ambitions, just, you know, through a moon infrastructure. There are still some hurdles to overcome. One worth mentioning is the next generation moon suits. I'll point you to a video that Real Engineering did that breaks it down really well, but the original Apollo suits didn't actually hold up very well against the lunar regolith. And in fact, the longest any of them were actually on the moon was 22 hours on Apollo 17. Yeah, with no water or wind to break it down, lunar dust it's basically just microscopic shards of glass. And yeah, these new suits are gonna have to hold up to that for like years at a time. Not to mention provide more freedom of movement and longer time for moonwalks that'll be needed for the construction and maintenance of a moon base. And yeah, there have been some major stumbles along the way with these new suits. Some are concerned that it's gonna throw the whole schedule way out of whack. So I do expect delays, I expect some bumps in the road, but I have reason to believe that NASA will pull this off. 2 words: pissing contest. Yeah, China's space program has been making some huge progress lately with their Tiangong space station and the Chang'e lunar program. So far, they've launched 7 successful missions to the moon, including orbiters, landers, and rovers, and have shown interest in landing humans there and establishing a habitable base on the South Pole. In fact, in 2021, they announced a partnership with Russia to build a moon base that they're calling the International Lunar Research Station. So yeah, they see an opportunity to position themselves as the true superpower in the world. To say that, you know, sure, the US was able to do great things 50 years ago, but now we've got the advantage. And I mean, let's face it, the moon is the ultimate high ground. Yeah, and I don't see the US just letting that happen. That's the kind of thing that makes dollars flow toward NASA. So my bet is that even though Artemis is only funded up through Artemis V, I think we'll see more funding in the future as this rivalry heats up. It's starting to look like Artemis could be fueled by the same forces that fueled Apollo. And if that is the case, what happens next? What is this beyond that NASA keeps referring to with Artemis? That'll be the subject of the next video in this series. But perhaps the most important thing about the new moon race and spaceflight in general is all the new potential technologies that could come out of it. Like aerospace-grade razors from Henson Shaving. If you haven't heard me rave about Henson Shaving before, the story here is that they're actually a shop that made aerospace parts, and along the way they got an idea for an innovative razor design, and here it is. Now, if you've never used a safety razor, maybe you're used to cartridge razors like this, allow me to convince you that this is worth trying. What makes this design so innovative is it supports the blade all the way across at a depth of only 27 microns. That's that super accurate aerospace engineering I was talking about. What that means is that there's less potential for the blade to bend and flex, which leads to skipping across your skin that they call chatter. And this results in a smoother shave with fewer nicks and bumps. But maybe the best reason to stop using these old cartridges is the cost. Each one of these can cost up to $2 each. These safety razors, which you can get like 5 to 7 shaves out of, 10 cents each. If you bought 100 of these cartridge razors, it would cost you like $200. A 100 pack of these things costs 10 bucks. Actually, it costs you $0 if you enter the code JoeScott at checkout. Just make sure and add one of these to your cart. Plus, these are 100% recyclable, no plastic used whatsoever. So it's less expensive, you get a better shave, and it's more sustainable. And I just think it's kind of cool. So go check it out. It's hensonshaving.com. Get a 100 pack of blades on me. And yeah, you pretty much won't spend another dime on shaving for at least a year. Links down below. Big thanks to Henson Shaving for supporting this video, and a huge shout out to the Answer Files on Patreon and channel members who are forming an awesome community, helping keep the lights on around here. I can't thank you guys enough. There's some new members I need to shout out real quick. Let me murder some names. We got Jacob Korazinsiowski, Robert Lee Pless Jr., Shotgun Orda, Thomas Bell, Philip Clay Cooler, Nero Guy 100, Pierre Cowett, Stephen Banks, Alistair Cook, David Jennison, Carson McQuestion, Coinbot, Michael Stafford of Maker's Place, Nilo Octavino, Mark Johnson, Father Sebastian, Tamara Wines, Georgescu, Alexandru, and Adam with an apostrophe. With a random apostrophe. Thank you guys so much. If you've been waiting to get your name read on this, I promise I'm getting to it. I'm way behind on these, but thank you guys so much. I do appreciate it. If you would like to join them, get early access to videos and get access to exclusive live streams and get a little thing next to your face when you go down in the comments below, just hit the little join button. Please do like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, maybe check out this video, which will probably take you back to the first Artemis video, just to kind of like keep things in a sequence here. And if you're not familiar with my channel, there's probably some other recommendations that YouTube's given you down here that have my face in the thumbnail. I invite you to check them out, and if you like them, I invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. That's it for now. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday, and go Artemis. It's gonna be really cool at the end of this month. Let's all have fun and celebrate together. All right, you guys have a good one. Love you guys. Take care.